Oh. Never call the meeting to order. 12:06. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alright, your roll call. Bernie? Yep. Sam?
Yep.
Mayor said he's not going to be here. He's excused. Sally? She replied. Rose?
Here.
David?
Present.
And Todd, you were here back on him. And I am there. Public comment. It's time to welcome public comment. You guys want to say something?
Hi.
He's on his way. So he's not here. He's just not this.
Yeah, I knew he's here.
Entertaining motion to approve the agenda. Everybody had a chance to look at it?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Motion to approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2018 meeting.
Well, one time I don't print them up because we always have them on the screen.
Do you need a copy of them? I can go print one out.
I read through them quickly online, but I figured
you could also pass and table it. Call another meeting in November, and you can just do two at that time.
What's the will of the board?
Pass, because I wasn't here anyway, so I can't do it, or disapprove it.
Should we make a motion? Table it?
table it for the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Where are the computers?
Because we don't have a packet, it's just the agenda. I didn't have the computers out today.
It would have essentially been the same packet as last month.
Alright. Unfinished business. City Council approved the sign and expenditure estimated completion date.
Yep. So, at the last meeting, I believe the street signs were approved of, and I think Bill LaRose is still waiting to get these signs in, which unfortunately the sidewalk work is taking all his time, so he hasn't had the opportunity to either get the signs or put them up. We do anticipate putting them up before the end of the year, hopefully before it gets too cold out. I'm not sure if signs encompasses the parking lot signs, or if you want to talk about that with B. But Mr. LaRose indicated that the one thing he needed from you guys today was either approval of or discussion of the changes to the parking lot sign that we introduced last time. You guys need me to print a copy of that up?
Changes. I remember that we had the one that had the City of Cedar Springs over the top, and that
Yeah.
was the one we had.
Give me 1 minute. Let me print out that parking lot sign so you guys can see what I'm talking about.
We have the mix too.
Just another update on those. Bill said that those signs are ordered, and once he receives them, it'll take 2 to 4 weeks to be installed. So, once they get them, we'll start working on it.
It'll look nice.
Yeah, a lot of people are hoping to see that. A lot of good.
Right now, Bill is the acting DPW supervisor.
Is that job being posted? Is there?
Nope.
Sorry, Mike, guys.
I've gotten a lot of good feedback on those impending signs.
No, I
gave you a hug for a second.
I thought
I did
so
too.
We're talking about the new signs,
Yeah.
and the parking lot signs.
Like spread.
Yeah. And, gotta get them ordered and up.
They were gross.
They are ordered.
They are ordered.
They are ordered, yeah.
We should have because of the sidewalk.
My apologies. So this is the sign for the parking lot that was proposed previously. And I guess we would ask for discussion of any changes or a motion to approve so we can move forward with getting cost estimates. So that at your next meeting, we could provide you with cost estimates and you could then approve the purchase at that point.
So it's really 30 inches wide?
It's a nice big sign.
Yeah, it is.
That's nice.
Huge.
Well, one of the problems that we have, the government, and of course I think you guys would agree with this, is the city has a number of parking areas in the city that nobody knows that it's public parking because the signage is so poor. So the current signs are very small and they're not identifiable as a city parking lot. I think that these signs will make a big difference in promoting knowledge of the public parking in the downtown area. And of course, any parking lots that would be created in the future could use some of the signage. But it follows through with what you guys previously approved with the street signs, follows a similar design, creates a certain amount of branding with the signage. I like it. I guess the only discussion really is if that's a sufficiently sized sign, whether you have any other changes you'd like to see to it. I believe the directional arrow obviously could be changed based on what direction we want to point.
I think they look great.
It's a big sign. Yeah.
How many, have we identified how many locations there?
So at this point, all we need is approval of what the sign looks like and the size. And then with that information, we'll go back to the sign company and say we need 12 signs at these locations. What's the cost estimate? And we will then bring that to you guys at the next meeting for approval for purchase.
Moving up the speed of government.
So there'll be two signs for north and south traffic?
I don't know if we necessarily need it north-south facing. So I assume you're talking about like on 2nd Street. There's that municipal parking lot there. Instead of having it facing north-south, what we could do is just have one facing outwards. And I don't think you need a sign once you're in the parking lot to identify it.
No, but like say if we put the one up by Davis when you're going north, you'd see it one pointing that way, right? But what if I'm coming from the north? Is there a sign?
But these would go on telephone poles, et cetera, wouldn't they, or would they have an individual post?
I guess I'd leave that up to the DPW to determine.
I think what you're saying, yeah, because if you have a car coming from either direction, you're still pointing at the same lot, depending which, if they're on a.
I mean, do you have to look over your shoulder to see it?
Like a two-sided sign, is that
Well,
what
yeah,
we're doing?
but this one would be, if you were going north, it'd be on the left, or the right, I suppose.
I think the arrow would go the other direction in that case.
Just for clarification on this,
Yes,
are
we
you
were
talking
on
about
left hand,
on
right.
Main Street where we're gonna put a sign, or I think he's talking about by the actual parking lot?
Yeah, my interpretation was that we'd be putting these right at the entrance to the parking lot themselves.
That's why I think we were talking different things here, that's why I want to make sure it's clarified where we're talking about these going.
Yeah, well, hence my earlier question, which you answered, and that we'll get to it later, but I would think it would also behoove us to have some of these on Main Street to point to those lots.
Well, we got one, but how big they are. And so what
Right,
you're saying,
make them all
this
same.
size.
What we might consider then doing, if that's what this body would like to see done, is revert back to the street side sized. So it looks like a street sign similar to how currently there's a post office sign going one direction.
Yeah.
So that way you don't jumble up Main Street with large signs all over the place.
Probably makes sense.
The ones we
There
have,
you go, step through.
I don't know if they're too high for people to see, a lot of people don't see them over there. How can they be too high? What do you mean?
Well, there was one in the middle of a lot pointing at the building, and I our street, so.
Yeah, location is one big issue. Obviously, we'll try to do things a little bit better. But of course, it's also cost effectiveness. If the DPW department's gonna have to auger out holes, fill them with concrete, buy the new U-channel poles and everything, the cost is gonna go up versus if we try to utilize what we currently have in place.
To me, like the street sign that go on the post office, well, I don't think that's probably exactly what we do. Now, these signs would be more like that a lot.
Yes.
So if someone turned west along the road, you would see that public parking lot. So that's what these are intended for.
Well, they'd be placed at the entrance to the lot themselves. And then if we feel like we need additional signage on Main Street, I would propose that we use a street sign sized sign
That makes sense.
that says parking and point it that way.
And put it right on the street sign.
Sorry, when it says post office.
Well, these being, I thought these were gonna be on Main Street as well, but I think a lot of cities do have similar ones on Main Street to point to some of the.
So I'm not opposed to that, but this body would have to propose and the city council would have to approve this is their street sign.
So when we get to that point after we approve the design, which if we need to make a motion, I will motion to approve these signs. But once we do get an estimate, maybe we have a plan A and a plan B.
Okay.
As an option. No, let's just approve the design. That'd be a separate discussion, I would say, when we get to that point, we don't need to order.
So you're proposing that we accept this design of this size?
For the lots themselves,
This
yes.
size, this design for the lot.
That's the motion on the floor.
Let you know.
I guess I'm a little confused because if that's gonna be at the front of the lot and it has an arrow pointing one way, but
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to have the arrow.
We can have these arrows to just be off, and just have it at the entrance of the lot, so people can.
I would imagine you probably want rules for parking, like hours.
Kind of like what's up at Elm Street, like,
Generally, you would say vehicle parking permitted between this time and this time at the front of a lot.
even with the parking lot behind the theater, maybe at the center. I know that the one there on Elm Street behind, Mitten and Jose's, there's a grammar on there about when you can park, when you can't park over there.
Well, and that sounds an awful lot like an administrative decision to inform the public of what the parking rules are. At this point, I'm simply asking the DDA to approve of a design standard, and then you can approve the purchase of the sign in that design standard at a later date.
A lot of townships have the parking rules as you enter town, so you don't have to put it on every small print on everyone, overnight parking and hours. So let's kind of have that on the way into town, on the way out of town, or whatever.
And to be completely honest, I think it's a little silly to print out the ordinance on a sign and slap it in every parking lot. You have to have a certain expectation that people will understand there are rules, and it's to their benefit to know what the rules are. Ignorance is not an excuse for the law. But, of course, we're also not, what's the word?
Second Street ladder and then campers.
So,
Well, there was a huge issue a few years ago about the overnight parking, so I don't know if we're going to put that in the Maple Street, overnight parking in the Maple Street parking lot. It's just something to consider.
it sounds like maybe we need to have a re-examination of what the parking rules are. That's not really something for this body.
Well, I think the parking spot that she's referring to, if I'm correct, is on Main Street, or out the street.
And also, excuse me, but it was also the fact that we had so many apartments in those driveways, and the people were parking in front of their houses, and it became a crowd. And you got four apartments in one house, and everybody's got two cars, and it's a problem.
Yep.
And it's tough on the people, on the residents, and where are they gonna be parking in this lot? And then.
And the city is aware of that.
2 blocks in the middle of winter, and I understand that.
The city's aware of it, but
I
of
know
course,
that.
the city has plowing problems, But also, it's not really appropriate to come back 10 years later and say, oh yeah, previous people approved this, but now we need you to do X, Y, Z with parking. So moving forward, we do require any new rentals to have identified parking.
I didn't know that, good.
But we also haven't had that many people come forward to say, oh, by the way, I'm using this as a rental. But we're doing the best we can. Do we have a vote on the motion?
Do you have any motion?
So the design standards of the sign for in front of the lot itself, I believe was.
There may or may not be the direct depending on where the design
Correct.
itself.
I believe we will bring the final proof of where they're gonna go and what they're gonna look like.
So we would be approving the sign design on that particular size.
If that's what you wanna make your motion.
You've got, make sure we're all voting on it.
To approve the design standard, look right there in front of you guys. That's presented.
I put 30 by 28.
Motion, do you think you seconded it?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Right.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Update on parking lot.
At Maple and Second Street.
Second, yeah.
Yeah. So the hope was that for Red Flannel Day, that we would be able to cordon off that area and use as parking, overflow parking for that day. Unfortunately, we had a substantial amount of rain a couple days ahead of time. And the DPW department didn't feel comfortable letting people park there due to the sogginess of the ground. We've also had some problems with the city engineer because they're working on a number of other projects here in the city. That when we asked them to come up with some basic engineering for that lot, they simply didn't have the time for it. So, under the current zoning ordinances, the city would have to submit a plan to the planning commission, which would then have to approve of several things to enable parking at that location. With the winter coming up as quickly as it is, we don't know how much time we'll have to get that done this year, but it is obviously something I'm working on. But it is our long-term goal to have a parking lot there, whether it be temporary or permanent surface. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that.
Yippee.
Well, we definitely need one there, especially if anybody was looking at parking over the Red Flannel weekend between the beer tents and the football games and people coming up town for food and stuff afterwards.
Well, I didn't get the opportunity to go out and do a census of parking and see where people were actually parking at. But obviously, I think having a organized parking lot is better than letting people park in everybody's front lawn. But yeah, eventually, if there's going to be an amphitheater there and there's going to be expanded businesses there.
And there's definitely a lot of not legal parking. When I look from my upper stairs, I can see where people parked along the trail. And I don't think them's parking spots.
Well, on a day-to-day basis, we know that there are people who park there to go to the library, to go to the brewery, to go all over the place. So certainly in our long-term interests, we just have rules we got to follow and limited resources.
Anything else on that before we go to item C? Wait for any time. What is staging rate for business district?
So is this the one that I think we talked about with the Maple Street sign and then a business district in the same form and fashion as a street sign pointing towards the business district? Is that what this is regarding?
I'm not sure. I'm presuming it's probably carried over from last meeting.
Well, wasn't the chamber working?
Is that what you're talking about? Is this one here?
Well, no, I'm throwing it out there because there was a discussion on a business district sign and on the chamber had a business.
Right now, the one that the chamber's working on, I've got two people that have got to get back to because I wasn't able to reach them. One was at the trailhead. And as far as the other wayfaring sign that we had worked on in conjunction with the DDA, we chamber worked on with the DDA back, the year that he got hired in, that one kind of went to the wayside due to some bickering, for the lack of a better word, of where we should put them, you know, they were gonna donate them to us and that.
One of the big thing about, we had the one, I know we spent a lot of time on it, for them to keep 2 months, and then we got the sign and then it was never maintained.
That was,
My fault, your fault, I don't know what happened to that.
you talking about the one from way back during Chris Burns' era?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was along the
I know
trail.
what, my point is, though, we're gonna do something, we gotta make sure we include maintaining that sign and updating it. Somebody has to be responsible, you, maybe, us, city, I don't know. That's my issue.
You were just talking about a sign pointing towards the business district.
Yeah, so let me summarize. It sounds like there's a lot more going on here than listed on the paper. So there is the possibility of putting up a street sign at the intersection of the White Pine Trail and Maple, indicating Maple Street, but also indicating business district to the east. Does that sound like something you thought you would be interested in funding?
No, I think, anybody that comes down that trail, unless you're a complete idiot, is gonna know where the business district is. Just by looking at it being there.
We have enough complete idiots.
We do not,
You probably
you don't have to
right.
spend the money for a sign that says the business district is that way.
But we could
That's
have a
my
Maple-
opinion, I'm just one guy here, okay?
But we could have a Maple Street sign there that would be pretty nice.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna
sure.
advocate one more time over the last 4 years, welcome to Cedar Springs, plain and simple. They know what town I'm in. That's it, welcome to Cedar Springs.
That'd be fine, I agree with that, it'd be wonderful.
Okay, Ms. Powell, you've now introduced a 4 sign, so if you'd like to talk about that. There's about 100 different variations we could use for that. The city government did put money towards spray painting on the White Pine Trail. Welcome to Cedar Springs, because it was a low cost, easy to maintain effort. Are you proposing something else?
Same thing I've proposed for the last 4 years, let's get a sign down there that says, welcome to the city of Cedar Springs.
Where at, what material, how big?
A regular city type sign,
Okay.
like that. It doesn't have to be maintained or renewed or moved.
In fact, you could just have the same sign, but remove all the middle stuff and just say welcome.
Absolutely.
And you could keep put business district with an arrow for the idiots.
There you go.
Well, that would be 3 signs. You'd have one
No, same sign.
south facing,
I take it.
south of 17, you'd have one north facing, north of 18, and one on Maple that had a business district. But they would all be the same and consistent with everything else.
That would be perfect, that sign.
Public comments are over.
I think it should be reflected from a snowmobiling standpoint.
And that's what city signs are,
Perfect.
as a rule.
All the guys are shopping for them right now.
Don't come over my foot.
But just to summarize that, as a model, if we had 3 different signs such as this, one say welcome, and 2 say welcome, one north of 18, one south of 17, and one that says business district at Maple.
Would it be possible then to further the discussion for next month for at least one of you to scribble on that paper indicating exactly what you're thinking about? So when we go to the company, we can ask for proof, and maybe at that time we could get a proof and cost of estimates for next month, and we could see about getting that done. And provide that to me after the meeting, and we'll go from there.
I'm on it, I'll take it on.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, David.
You don't want to have it all one sign.
I think the point is, you have it at the entrance, north and south, and one in the middle. We have to do 3 signs.
That's what I think.
Make sure it's reflected.
You talking about one that is all at the stationery, or are we going back to where we talked a long time ago about one?
So the one in the middle, you might want to have
Stationary,
post.
Maple
So
Street,
count 4
heart of Cedar
panels
Springs.
total.
You gotta those little signs are pretty helpful, you know, and I'm not familiar where the restaurants or something are unless they're in Green City, you know, little things.
It was one of the big discussions at the panel at Fred Meyer Garden there last month that I went to. There's a couple of other representatives from Cedar Springs that were there, but that was one of the big discussions on the trail and that people don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of, especially not so much of the point, well, that's somewhat true, but a little more than where some, like in the UP, you know, they might run 100 miles. And I'm not sure what's going on around Marquette or even Grand
I don't know if you're in Sand Lake, Howard City, or.
You know, if you got a little sign in it, it does stop you. Like even at Sand Lake, you could stop and walk down to the bar to get a drink or something to eat. Yeah, especially at the brewery, you could walk up there to eat. I mean, it's so, because that trail is very close proximity to some of the things that you'd be interested in.
Is it the same sign that the company, do you know, that they use, is it the one over in Lansing?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know.
I know when we ordered the wayfaring signs there, I think it was the same place. That was from Tom, but if you can find out for me where they're ordered, I want to look on their website and just check out sizes. I assume they can customize it, but we'll find out. I'll put together a little packet. So that's it.
Well, I've spent a lot of time on the trail, and I heard people say, oh, is this Rockford? Am I in Rockford yet? Or what little town is this? As you know, and the little signs on the sidewalks are good, but they're real easy to miss for folks, unless you walk. And if you're biking, you gotta watch where you're going.
Well, the one on the pavement, that's where a lot of the bicyclists are actually looking when they're riding the bike is down.
Well, the point is well taken. My only concern is we have to put them within the city's road easement.
Like,
Can't just be putting it in the middle of the Wayfront Trail without getting permission. So
right,
I guess we got some work to do on that.
okay. Are still the Maple Street sign still on this discussion?
It's certainly something we can talk about. It might be wise to put the double-sided welcome to Cedar Springs at the same location on the same sign. Because first of all, we have the road easement there.
Right.
And, you know, in the actual staging area itself, there is some signage, I think, on the benches, welcome to Red Flannel Town, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But we don't have any rights to any of that property there, which is part of the problem that we had with the previous, I think, three-sided sign
The key
discussion.
option was gonna be donated is where to put it, whether it's on the city property versus state property.
The city only owns the east side of that parking lot.
Right, but there must have been something done at the time to put the red flannel stuff over on the west side. There must have got some permit or something from somebody.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, they're banking on the ask for forgiveness thing, I'm thinking.
I don't know, I just can't believe anybody would have done anything like that without
Yeah,
asking.
nobody
That's
around
your
here
name,
ever
Rose.
goes near it.
I had nothing to do with that,
I don't know.
I swear. First time.
Anything more on wayfaring signs? Any bicycle racks? Certifications.
I've been working on that, and it turns out they're kind of a seasonal group of people who make this stuff. I'm having difficulty getting them. Tell me if they'll make it in red, and if so, what reds, and I want some samples so that I can make sure that it's not maroon or orange looking. And I'm waiting for people to get back with me right now. Just emails out back and forth. But as soon as I can figure out a red that comes close to our red flannel red, I'll just buy a rack.
PA 186C is the color.
PA
186C.
Is that Sherman Oils?
No, that's the Pantone.
Okay.
Any true color thing, they'll know that. Pantone color.
That'll help.
I should also, just for a point of discussion, the city DPW department did install the rack we were given in front of City Hall about a week before Red Flannel Day. It was knocked over on or about Red Flannel Day, which may or may not have been intentional, we don't know. The surface mount with the bolts simply is not as secure as something that's installed into the concrete, but it's also substantially cheaper to do a surface install. So part of the discussion should probably be with the DPW department about costs of different types of installations, and whether we want to do one or the other. Because obviously, if you can knock it over and then, take the entire...
Was it ruined or just knocked down? It can be remounted.
From my understanding, and I haven't seen it, is it was knocked over and can be remounted. But, it's part of the thing is, if it gets knocked over and then you can just slide the bike right off it, is it secure?
It was probably knocked over by a truck, I'm assuming, or a car.
Well, I've seen some kids hanging on this one out here, kind of.
If you've got 400 pounds rocking back and forth, it might pull a few bolts out of the ground too.
I wonder,
It looked like half inch bolts.
you know, if it's anything. You know, I guess they could have rocked it enough to pull it off the ground.
But the bolts weren't that far in. They could use regular anchors, and I can't imagine without actual trucking. But I could see that happening.
Well, I don't like that design. I think it's flimsy. I just, the way they were rocking, it's like, oh, these things are nothing to them.
Well, yeah.
My proposed idea is, what's wrong with the old galvanized ones that you can get them different lengths and you can drive the truck? I think any of these newer ones, I don't like the look of them, and I just think they're going to be problems all the way along the road. Because that's just an example of what happens. But that's just my opinion.
Well, of course, it also becomes a problem when people think they're going to park their bikes on them permanently instead of for a few minutes while they're in the business. And the racks that I think you're talking about, they take up a substantial amount of space. And frankly, I think they're unsightly. I think the bollard ones, they, look a little bit more, I guess I'd say, in line with the architecture of the downtown.
And just for sure, something that was, I mean, it distressed me quite a bit to watch those kids just rock. I mean, that's not how my kids, I had a little. But, I mean, it's gonna happen. And I just wish we could come up with a design that was slightly, I mean, I understand you're trying to do this, I'm not sure. But, yeah, there's something that's wrong. You know, like, you're gonna get kids to do that. You've got people in your family, the kids are all outside, you know, wait for mom and say, sure, I wish that's something.
Well, it isn't customers' kids that are, we have a problem with local kids that are
What I'm
probably the
saying,
same
it could be
similar.
a kid or a local kid, whatever design, we gotta come up with something to do is, something that's not gonna let the users, or maybe it's just what's gonna happen, they're gonna have to replace it.
It might also just not be a wise idea to put them on Main Street then. If you want to have more substantial racks, maybe find a couple of side streets that you can put them on.
That would be my,
Well, one nice thing about the bolts, if the bolts give out before the rack gives out, it's kind of like a fuse, so it's a shear thing, it saves you. So maybe the bolt mount isn't a bad way, if it's gonna get broken off, it's better to be broken off than left to that. If that rack is remountable, it's easy to just undo some rolls, stick some anchors in it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it's smart to have the DPW have a little discussion about what they think is the best mounting option.
Could we ask them to join us for our next meeting so we can look at some of the options and maybe present their opinion? That might be helpful, instead of us talking in circles.
I will discuss it with them.
No, send us, as we talked about, send it back on.
It might behoove the group also to take a look and see what other cities do, whether they can find another city that has Main Street mounted bike racks. What type, what surface, how many?
I keep my eyes open for that, I have my work on.
We'll say Rockford has the same ones that I have behind mine, but they're the real short versions. They're all painted green, as I recall, and have them sprinkled all over. That's where I got mine.
Right here has an actual feel.
Big more of the tower one or the
Instead of hoop ones, they're probably triple hoops, put in some quad hoops across the Purdyville, that parking lot.
No, I have the standard, pull your bike into it.
Well, that's my,
They're the same as Rock, they're exactly the same ones as Rockford, but I called that company, I called the city of Rockford and said, what do you have? And that's what I got. But theirs is shorter. I have two 10-footers, I think those are all 4 foots that they have. They're just sprinkled around downtown. But there are other cities that do different things.
Personal techniques, I like the shorter.
Having a lot of little ones all over is better than a couple of central ones that are big. But again, if we get their opinion, let's start with, in terms of security, what we need for mounting, that may give us the options that we would have to work with. You stop by through here and have a look. They're red, they're right next to the parking lot back. God bless you.
Really, decide what height, decide, yeah, how many locations, each of the figure out what people do.
That's an ongoing discussion.
But right now, it is going to be a good deal to the spring anyway, because not the end of this week.
Mark is usually good. There's nothing more on the break, right? With the city flags. Especially in that last month, you brought some ideas.
I brought some ideas. I don't know, did I send those over to you?
Yeah.
So I don't know, you talked about maybe trying to make them look nice, but I just did quick samples as an idea, because it's open source, there's no trademark, it's red and white, and you can add anything to it for
I think I got an email I was CC'd on at some point with a bunch of different designs. Unfortunately, I just got it today because I was on vacation, sorry. So I guess I'll strive to put that back on the agenda. The city takes no position on that. If the DDA wants to make a recommendation to the city council for adopting a flag, that's on your own initiative.
If we decide to adopt a flag, what would be the process in creating the flag?
This body would make a recommendation to the city council. And you could sweeten the deal by offering to pay for the design and purchase of said flag. And then the city council has to approve it, because the city council is the sitting body that represents the city. Of course, I would state that I think it would be extremely unwise to adopt the city flag without public input. So you'd probably want to hold a public hearing or a charrette or something to see about getting public input on different flags. And/or pay for a professional organization to come in and take a look at the different options, and they can put together a more professional-looking flag design. Those are a couple options.
So where would these flags be, just hanging from the poles that are at the end, like banners?
You could make banners on them, they could be used almost in any event. You have a number of them. One obviously would fly in front of City Hall and any city business that wanted them. Obviously, we can go through that whole process too. There's an expense, of course, to doing that, particularly option C. This, as I said, as I preface the comments, is open source, and it is malleable in that you can put the logo in the middle of that red and white field with that historical pattern, and it can be adopted whether it's the school or Red Flannel or any other organization can obviously make use of that same pattern. But it's just, again, a way of branding downtown, much like we're doing with consistent signage.
Well, we should put it out in the social media world and see if anybody has suggestions for the design, not just suggestion. I want to see you tree on it. Okay, how?
I think you will find very, very low public participation in that way.
Well, when they had the new logo, I think they only had 7 interests in design that was submitted, after it went public, that that's what they was going with, even though it's been public through social media plus newspaper, and then, it's always after the fact that people want to complain.
maybe we should give, the data that you forwarded me to the high school art teacher and have a little contest and see if any high school kids want to participate in developing something and winning a contest. You get a lot of free artwork that way. There's some talent in the school.
Our last flag was designed that way. It was an open, the one that was destroyed was an open contest, and it was developed in that direction. And it was pretty nice. It really hurt me when they destroyed it instead of sending it to the museum.
And maybe using the term flag is a strong word, as I said. But my thought with this is that pattern that obviously we already use, but that pattern can be used in almost anything. You can create a flag using that as well, but as it's more of a branding for downtown. So it's called the idea of downtown coat of arms.
So you're saying like use that for branding rather than what we've done for the last 70 years?
Well,
Red flannels is trademarked.
Exactly, but I'm saying that's what this city did for years growing up when I grew up here. But now you're saying, well, we can't use that, let's have something else we can brand.
I'm not talking specifically about that. I'm saying this is open source, it's not trademarked, no one's ever going to be upset. So
We could use it for somewhere.
you could use it for anything. And you could put the red flannel logo right on it if you wanted to. So it's just a background, it's just a pattern. If the blank flags are cheap and you can fly and you create banners, etc. from them, so. Anyway. And if we don't have interest in this, certainly doesn't have to go anywhere either, but I thought
flag is something that's been discussed the last couple of years. It just hasn't necessarily been brought to a board to do so.
I'll make sure it goes on your agenda for next month with the information that was provided to me, which I did not have for this meeting, unfortunately.
So it's going to a council, that's going to council, or it's going to be on our.
We come back to this board, and then you guys may have some discussion about which ones you do or don't like. You could propose public participation, art teachers, if you want to get a hold of them and see if they're willing to work with you. Any number of options.
Anything else on flag before we understand where we're at in the process of that? Item 7. Don't necessarily really have anything under new business on there.
Can I introduce something? Probably not.
As item of discussion or item of,
Just for discussion. Okay. Never mind.
you can bring it up under trustee.
I will.
City manager, you got anything?
I was happy to finally get the Adopt a Pot program off the ground with, thank you for letting me use your name, DDA and the Chamber of Commerce working together. I know a couple of you are participating in that, and I appreciate that. I think we'll have to tighten up some of the rules of participation in the future. One of the things I noticed was none of the pots have their numbers on them, including city halls, which I think will make it a little bit more difficult for people to identify which one was their favorite and vote for their favorite based on number. So hopefully we can get information out to the participants if they can put their number on there. I also have a little 8x11 poster, which would be nice if you put those up in some of the participating businesses, so that when people are visiting that business, they'll be aware of the project we have going on. So that between the 24th and the 31st, they'll be able to vote for their favorite, both online and then as a paper ballot here at City Hall during trick-or-treating. I think it's a fun, kind of easy way to get both public participation, a little bit of advertising, a little bit of whimsy on Main Street. So I was happy to do that. Hopefully we can do it better in the future.
Looks great.
Yeah, there's some pretty fun ideas out there.
I just have one thing to report. Just so you guys are aware, the agenda goes out a week prior to the meeting. So if you guys have submissions or additions, please do get those ahead 1 week prior to the meeting. Generally, the process is after this meeting, I type up the minutes, put together a draft agenda, send it to the chairperson and the city manager, and then a week prior, the city manager would review it, and then make any changes, so forth, and then it would go out a week prior.
You say you send it to the chair a week after?
Yep, I send it to you every month.
I don't get that one.
Oh, I've been sending it to you for 6 months.
I get the one that shows up as actual agenda, but I don't get one the week after.
Okay, see me after the meeting, maybe.
Right.
I think the point of that was if you guys have things you wanted to discuss, if you have information to provide to the group, please do so at least a week ahead of your meeting so that we can compile it and get all the information out to the same people and to the public at the same time.
Wouldn't it be that you want to do it prior to a week? She does it on the week. So you get a little bit.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
the week is the last opportunity to do so. We are supposed to have it prepared and done and ready to go at least a week ahead of time.
so we should be prior to that.
Sure.
December 26th is our next one.
November 26th.
November 2nd.
And that'll be the last meeting for the year, at which point we'll hopefully have a couple of dates for you for future meetings. Due to the initial funding this year, I think we had a couple extra meetings that we didn't normally have. I think maybe the clerk and I will discuss how to stack our meetings for next year. I'm not sure we need to do the quarterly meetings as it's been done in the past. We might want to center stack in the spring and the summer like we did this year, and then maybe have a shoulder meeting on either side of that. And in any case, we'll talk about it for your next meeting and provide some proposed dates that you guys can talk about for next year.
Note on the poster thing, to get your flyer poster, whatever you want to call it. I did send it to all the participants this morning. Took a while. Every time I type 3 letters, somebody would call it, somebody would come in or whatever. But I did get it sent out before I came to this meeting. And it did indicate in there, reminding people what their numbers were, and to include that in their decorating. So hopefully if they hadn't already, that they go back out and do so. I think all but 2 of them are decorated right now. One was just put out today, we had another latecomer, so.
I think we've got a couple that were decorated that didn't actually enter the contest as well.
Right. Yeah, we got 2 that hadn't submitted a form, and we got 2 that are undecorated. Separate 2. But I thought it was nice being that we're 2 no more than 15 to start with, and we got 13 right now. And I got some of them already asking, we originally talked about doing it, decorating for 3 months, some of them they want to just skip to November and just go straight to the Christmas decorating.
Well, as you and I talked about the other day, part of what's nice about the October decoration is you have an inbuilt trick-or-treating opportunity for people to see them and view them and vote for them. You don't get anything like that for Thanksgiving. You do technically get something like that for December with Christmas, but I believe you said the Christmas party was December 2nd?
There's actually 4 now, being we have the carriage rides. The big one is the 1st of December, that first Saturday in December, that's when we get the biggest turnout. Then we have people in town for the second weekend because of the events at the Kent Theater. But I think we're probably going to have an overwhelming number for the carriage rides. Because when I expressed it at Women's Club, there's quite a few people that was excited about it, but they were kind of disappointed that it's only 1 day. Well, it's the first time, we'll see how it works.
Well, but I think we're missing the central point, and that is...
We could have it at, you're looking for a mass of people looking around seeing them to be able to vote. Is that what you're looking at?
Well, yes, but the point is the businesses should be advertising for themselves, and people are walking around looking at them, going up and down Main Street where the businesses are. If everybody's gonna be at one location for the Christmas tree or whatever, they're not being spread throughout the city. So you have to kind of find an equilibrium there between having them, spread out so people can walk up and down Main Street and see them, versus all the events happening in one location, like Christmas versus Halloween.
Well, the first Saturday of December, Christmas, that one's always tough.
Well, so I guess the question is whether this body would be interested in working with the chamber again, doing something similar, keeping in mind that, I did the work.
Yeah, so already, yeah.
So I guess would this body be interested in lending its name to doing this again?
Is the chamber wants to do the Christmas decoration and
Yeah, well, we,
Thanksgiving or straight to Christmas?
one of our chamber members had their staff go around and solicit for different people to see about who wanted to participate in it. I went out and see who wanted to participate in it. And just Ryan Donahue also checked with a few different people. So we did the legwork, to get people involved. Mike emailed because he CC'd me in some of the emails, the ones that he sent out to as well. So it's a multiple participation type thing. And yes, since we have ones that have participated in it now that would love to do it again for the upcoming holidays, I'm all for it. I'm pretty certain the rest of our board would be interested in as part of the chamber board.
But you mean skipping Thanksgiving and going straight to Christmas, is that what you're saying? Going from the decoration of October to the decoration of Christmas, and just to skip Thanksgiving, that's what I'm trying to figure out what your plan is, as a chamber.
Well, the chamber hasn't discussed that as a whole, but if that's what the majority of the people want to go with,
Just leave it the same, it's already out and doing it. Don't change it this year. If you're gonna change it next year.
So the plan is now to do Thanksgiving and Christmas?
that was the original plan. There's a couple people who suggested we only do it for October and see what the public thought.
Okay,
Because they was afraid we wasn't gonna have any participation.
okay,
And so that's why right now, the forms that people sign is just for October.
okay.
And now the decision is, do we go back to the original, since we've got, almost our 15, we've got 13 of them to put stuff out. Do we do a Thanksgiving or more of a harvest one, or do we just jump into Christmas?
Okay, so what we have to decide right now is whether DDA, we're gonna put our name on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
We're not setting any, this is director's report. Our action is done.
This is just discussion at this point.
So we're not gonna vote, we don't have to vote on whether DDA is going to support or advertise for it.
I mean, if you guys wanted to straw poll something, that's fine, but part of the problem is this is quite a bit of work. There's a lot of organization that goes on behind the scenes to get it done. I personally like to see how Halloween turns out before we jump into doing other things. This is kind of just a pet project. I was trying to get things done in a low participation, and I'd like to see how it turns out first. We don't have to jump into doing this constantly, immediately. Anyways,
Leave that, after we start, we've got a bunch of people doing their stuff. It's going to be helpful, this isn't going to change the world.
So does that mean, Mike, you're still gonna be working background as DDA? This is what I'm trying to figure out, is this gonna be a chamber event, is it gonna be a combination event?
well, I haven't heard from the chamber.
Okay,
If this body's okay with me continuing to use their name, really, this body didn't do a whole lot with this contest.
right, but you do.
I am doing it in your name to promote the name of the DDA, which is part of beautifying the downtown. So I guess moving forward, the only thing I can offer you is that the chamber would like to do some work, and they'd like to formulate a plan, and we can come on similar terms to organization of a future event. I'd be willing to do so, and I would be willing to do so to promote the name of the Downtown Development Authority.
Whatever they decide to do, I guess we can vote. One, I guess we can support. If we, everybody else agrees, I don't need to start off the vote or.
it's just fine, nobody has any objections, we're just gonna plan on, if you really, if you have any objections, just send yours to the city manager. Mention that the last one is 26th. Trustee comments. Bernie, you got anything?
No. The only thing I got, is I hope if we get if the flag deal gets done, it's only a personal experience, 'cause I have 5 flags in the house. I got a barn, I got 5 or 6 flags. I got a Michigan flag, I got a Cedar Springs flag, I got a Rockford flag, I got a Fairfield, and I got a bunch of little flags, and they're all over the place. And they've lasted about a year, maybe 2. Years ago, I bought a Dale Jarrett flag. It's been 15 years. It's still perfect. Whatever that flag is, I want to use that. It's perfect after 15 years. Everything else.
Dale Jarrett's honey trademark for the city.
I don't know, whatever it is. It's an 88 flag. It's on my deck, and the thing is beautiful. It never goes bad. That's all I got.
Check the brand name.
I will.
Anything, Sam? Got it?
I was texting a teacher at the high school, she's going to get the email address for the art teacher. So I'll send an email out, a copy of the money here, and we'll discuss it. So, we're CPA.
It was on the phone, it was- Anything else?
Only thing I was wondering about was the Christmas lights, lighted trees. Do we have anything planned going forward on that? Lights?
Well, we got the lights, just waiting for the mayor play it. Last year we did it on, I think that's that week.
So we're set to go. He's ready or?
Yeah.
Lights, is that chambers?
That is a cool thing. It was done through chamber based the funds in it last year, and the mayor represented DDA stuff. Well, I helped him speak. He with the rest. But, chamber has some lights, and the city said they had some lights that was from upstairs that they found. And then the city used to do the lighting.
And I thought that was a huge asset to our city, but, the year before, those lights went out so dark and dreary and dull downtown. That just made a whole different, with your lights and your new lights and neighbors' lights. It was great.
Good to see some stuff getting done, and this is visible stuff, that's good. The parking lot, that's moving forward good, so, I mean, we're finally making some progress, and also have now.
Alright. Evidently, Rose, trying to read my mind or whatever. Last, month or two, it started getting darker earlier. Keep going back to thinking when we've talked before about lighting up both sides of the things in town, because it looks dark when you come through Main Street, like, 7 o'clock at night, it looks like you're midnight. And if there's any way now that the DDA is getting funding down the road, it reminds me of, what was it, 2,200 or 22,000 last time? It was brought up about. Anyone refuse here yet?
I couldn't hear the question.
The
Repairing
lanterns,
the lanterns.
the lanterns on Main Street, that light up at dusk.
Yeah.
Were you here yet, or was that before you?
I still haven't heard the question. We're talking about lanterns, what
Yeah.
about them?
At one point in time, we had discussed through council, and I can't remember if it was DDA or not, what it would cost to bring them up so that they were all working. And it was either 2,200 or 22,000.
It was a lot.
That's a little different.
There's 22 something, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
$22?
No, I know it's,
Figure out, get that back.
22